constantly talk to myself. Like there was not a day that you couldn't get me to stop talking to myself about some more reason why my parents would like result in like abuse. They would try to shut me up, thinking that would help, and it just made it worse. So I started meditating like about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And then it started making sense to me. Like
good.
Just starting to quiet the mind and just like occupy it with something else.
Beautiful.
I use crystals and everything really.
So I love what you shared, but what you just shared is you didn't actually quiet your mind, you just shifted what you focused on.
Yeah.
Do you see the difference there?
Mm-hmm.
So you chose to focus on more positive, beautiful, happy, healthy things, but that's still a busy mind, which is still great. So that's kind of what I'm talking about, that you learn to just see the mind and observe it and learn where to put it. So yeah, just makes it a lot easier than thinking someday your mind all of a sudden is just going to go silent. So
not a lot of alcohol.
Yeah. You should be downstairs, Theo. We're gonna move on. So glad you're all here. And to the at least 3 people whose shoes somehow you figured did not fit or go into the shoe rack, I did magically figure out how to get them into the shoe rack. They go into the shoe rack the same way everybody else's shoes do. So when you walk outside and your shoes are not where you put them, they're in the shoe rack. So we'll figure that out later. If you think somebody walked off with your shoes, they're in there. All right, so those joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you for showing up. Couple things to tell you before we begin with the meditation practice. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Do not judge your practice, meaning do not ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? You're just going to sit and breathe. Your mind will continue to race. It'll wander everywhere. I'll say things periodically to either wake you up because you've fallen asleep or remind you that you're lost in thought and just work on bringing you back to the present moment. Most important, do not expect silence. You'll hear noises, phones ring, doors open, people cough. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often it helps side to the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or lap, whatever is comfortable for you. If you need to move, simply move. It doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means you need to move. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Again, most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding your attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release thought. Turn attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from your practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external situation. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. This is not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't fix that. It creates opportunities for you to be present with life as it is. Perception into each moment very clearly, not escaping each moment, which is what so many of us have done a majority of our lives. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in every moment. And that never changes. That is all of the practice. It's where it begins and where it ends. Awareness of body, speech, and mind. This is what the Buddha called karma. The word karma is action. It's not what we get, it's what we give. What do we bring into the world with our thoughts and with our words and with our actions? And that's it. We spend so much time trying to fix, change, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us. This practice is working on changing our mind, our hearts, our reaction. And it doesn't mean the world isn't a mess, and it doesn't mean you should pretend everything is great. It's not. But when you work to create change in the world, do it from a place of loving kindness and compassion and understanding, not from hatred and anger and rage, which is where so many people are coming from. It's really easy to point fingers and blame everyone else and everything else. And maybe that works for you in your lives, but that's not this practice. This practice isn't about what other people are doing, right or wrong. This practice is, what are you doing? That's it. It's a mirror. It's a reflection back on you. Which is why it's so fun. Getting to know your thoughts and your words and your actions is not pleasant. I mean, unless all you do is sit around and think perfectly happy, peaceful, kind, gentle thoughts all day long. But the fact that you're all here Tuesday night at 7 o'clock tells me probably not. No offense to the ones who do think peaceful, happy thoughts all day long. So it's a practice, it's a challenge. With that, I'll pause. Always really prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And to those joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. Say hello as you are in the chat box. If you have any questions, you can put them there. I'll do my best to respond. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening for questions.
Is there any way that we can try to attempt to quiet the mind?
So the question was, is there any way that you can try to attempt to quiet the mind? It's a great question, but it still comes from the place as if you think quieting the mind is beneficial or a good thing. And I understand these, you're not the only one who would seemingly be a little bit, maybe, I don't want to say you're confused, but based on what you said earlier, my response to your question now, that would make me tend to think you're a little confused around this piece, yeah? Or at least maybe I haven't been as clear as I should be. So the question around, is there any way to quiet the mind? What drives everything you do?
Food.
What determines everything you do? Yourself, and specifically your what?
Your mind.
Your mind. So wouldn't it be nice to always know every single thought that you're having? Now, the problem is not the thoughts. The problem is the types of thoughts we're having. So when one says we want to quiet the mind, often, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I've been around this long enough, that often when one says they want to quiet the mind, that's with this idea that what's in their mind is unpleasant, right? So if your mind was filled with happy, wonderful, peaceful, joyful thoughts all day long, wouldn't that be great? Would you want to quiet that?
Yeah.
No. So again, I come back to, it's not about quieting the mind. It's this term kind of in Western meditation. Everyone's like, I'm just going to, I don't want to get started on it, but welcome to America. We've ruined meditation. Zen practice is an awareness. It's an awareness. An awareness of your thoughts. Because your thoughts determine, not always in this order, but your thoughts determine what you say, which determine what you do. So the practice is not to quiet that. The practice is to become fully aware of what you think. And if your thoughts are unpleasant, the Buddha referred to all phenomena being pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So specifically with our thoughts are either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Right? You have pleasant thoughts about things you like. You have unpleasant thoughts about maybe some of the things you shared earlier from the past. And you have neutral thoughts that really don't matter. So our thoughts, the Buddha put them in kind of those three categories. So the practice is to continue to build a life to where your thoughts are pleasant. Now, the reality is we all will spend our entire lives having unpleasant thoughts. I mean, I can't speak for anyone else. I will live my entire life having a lot of unpleasant thoughts. You're wonderful. You finally believe something I said, right? The practice isn't about quieting the mind. The practice is about how can you do one of two things. How can you cultivate more pleasant or neutral thoughts so you're not focused on unpleasant thoughts, right? And two, how can, when you have unpleasant thoughts, which you're going to have, learn to be okay with them. That's the challenge. That takes time. That's the practice. The practice is to cultivate generosity, loving kindness, and compassion. And the more you love and give and care for others, the more your heart and mind open up, the better you'll feel about yourself, and the less likely you are to have as many unpleasant thoughts. When these unpleasant thoughts do arise, which they will, and they always will, are they permanent? No. Are they going to go away?
Yes.
The Buddhist teachings on impermanence tells us all conditioned phenomena come together for a period of time and ceases to exist. So your unpleasant thoughts. I spent years filled with anger and rage and depression. That's what led me into this practice. And one of the worst things was feeling depressed when I was, 15, 16 years old and thinking that depression was forever. Do you know how nice it was to eventually reach a point where you had an unpleasant thought, and the simple fact that you knew that thought was going to go away, that in and of itself already helped me feel better. But when you're in that moment, you think you're just stuck there. So continue to cultivate good thoughts, good words, good actions, which will bring more pleasant thoughts. And when the unpleasant thoughts arise, see them as impermanent thoughts that will fade away. They don't define you, right? You've had a terrible past from what you've shared. You've gone through tremendous trauma, as have many, if not all, in this room. But that's not who you are. That doesn't define you. You don't have to label yourself as that person your whole life. Every sentence, every share out of your mouth doesn't have to start with all of that, because then you're still there. Move forward. Look at the trauma and the pain when you want, feel it when you want and need to, and know that that's not who you are. Those are things that have happened. This is the Buddhist teachings around non-self, right? We've all had experiences in our lives. Many pleasant, many unpleasant, and many neutral. This has been our entire lives. And this is going to be the rest of our life. Pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral experiences. None of those are who we are. They're moment-to-moment experiences. And the practice is to learn to be at ease, at peace, and embracing each experience and each moment as it arises. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. What else? Questions? Yeah.
I just want to bounce this off you, a very brief insight, really, really short. I was thinking about how the Bodhisattva vow gets transferred from lifetime to lifetime, but then I got, wait, that's the total wrong way to think about it. It's the momentum of their loving kindness that gets transferred, and then the vow sort of sprouts from that loving kindness. Is that a better way to look at it?
I think, just to put into context, those who are not familiar with that. So Bodhisattva translates to enlightened being. The idea in Mahayana school of Buddhism with the Bodhisattva is that the vow is to be reborn life after life until all sentient beings are free from suffering. Now, anytime I introduce this Bodhisattva practice, the Bodhisattva vow, I always like to add that, I don't know. I mean, how many of you came here tonight wanting to make sure you have a good rebirth? Exactly, nobody. So the people in this culture did not, for the most part, grow up or were raised with this idea of rebirth or reincarnation or continuation of consciousness. People are here because they want to be peaceful and kind and happy and at ease and whatever words you want to use. But most people are not here because you want to have a good rebirth. At the time of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, when he was teaching 500 years before Christ, for the most part, everybody believed in rebirth or reincarnation or continuation of consciousness. It's just the audience and the view of the people at the time. If you went to somebody at the time of the Buddha, again, 500 years before Christ, and said, hey, you got one life and then you're going to heaven or hell, they would have thought you were crazy. If you walk up to people today and say, hey, you're going to be reborn or have some continuation, people today think you're crazy. It was just a different time when he was teaching a completely different view. So this teaching of the Bodhisattva, the vow to be reborn life after life until all sentient beings are suffering, it was this idea of saying, hey, I'm not going to go into nirvana and free myself from the cycle of rebirth because there are still people who are suffering. The reason I share that first part is the concept for me as a practitioner of the Bodhisattva vow is not looking at it from a standpoint of rebirth, life after life, but moment to moment, day after day, right? So you all came here tonight. Do you all have an idea and hope that you wake up tomorrow? Yes. So then the idea is tomorrow, can I help everybody who's suffering? And so the vow, yes, is not about transferring it. It's about continuing that vow with moment to moment, day after day, week after week, year after year, as long as we are alive, to do whatever we can to help others suffer less. And that includes ourselves. The Bodhisattva vow is not about ignoring yourself. We are here. We exist. We just exist differently from how we perceive ourselves, but we are here. And so we have to take care of ourselves first and foremost, because if we don't take care of ourselves, you know, the oxygen mask on an airplane will tell you, yourself first, then the children. We must care for ourselves as well. But then look at how do we help others. So just moment to moment. What else? Yeah.
I was asked last time too.
Oh, yeah.
Topic again.
Go ahead.
About crossing spiritual materialism.
Yeah. Phrased it so differently from last time.
Yeah, my original question is like nowadays.
I was cautioning you. That's right.
Yeah, that we see everywhere all this meditation.com.
Yeah.
And yoga with beer and different types of and you know, like so many things
Yes.
around spirituality. So the last part of it was crossing.
Yeah.
The spiritual materialism.
Yeah, no, I know. And the reason I asked you to share it again was because last week when you asked it, it was like 8:01 and I could probably talk for like 12 hours on this topic. And so it is important. But the idea around like, you know, welcome to America 2025 and the word Zen is everywhere. The word yoga, you know, is everywhere. The word meditation, all this stuff is everywhere. And I was also talking about, you know, being very cautious when you go places because, you know, everybody, you know, they take 20 hours or whatever, and all of a sudden they want to be your teacher and your guru and your master. And, they want you to pay them a bunch of money and travel the world with them. And like, there's just a lot of weird stuff out there. And so Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and this is what brought up he wrote a book titled Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. Incredible text. I will also introduce, anytime I introduce Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, he was identified at a very young age by the Dalai Lama, current Dalai Lama, as kind of this future wonderful, leader of Buddhism and all this stuff. He eventually disrobed, meaning no longer was a Lama, went to Colorado in the 60s, built Shambhala, which is one of the, if not the largest school of Buddhism around the world. All of you know Pema Chodron. Mm-hmm. So Pema Chodron was one of his students. Everybody loves Pema Chodron. What they don't realize is Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, as he disrobed, meaning he just became one of the people in Colorado in the 60s, he did everything in Colorado in the 60s that everybody else did in Colorado in the 60s, including completely inappropriate sex with students, drugs, alcohol, teaching the Dharma, all this stuff. This was his life. Now, if you pick up the reason I mention this is because if you pick up a Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche book, which I still think as a writer and speaker and teacher of Buddhism, one of the best I've ever heard. And so I used to read his stuff a lot. And then I learned about his actions and I was like, forget that guy. And then I learned that Pema Chodron was a student of his. And then I saw the documentary Crazy Wisdom. And then I realized, look, I'm not trying to become him. If you read his books, I like the way he taught. I don't like what he did. I don't approve of what he did. And I think what he did was disgusting and wrong. But the way he taught was brilliant at that time for those people. And I think still applies today. There's a lot of that out there. And as I mentioned last week, Buddhism is not free from scandal, from sexual assault, from abuse of power. A lot of people, what I call Buddhist arrogance, they're like, oh, the church this, the temple this, the mosque this, all over other religions are like, I'm going to go to Buddhism. They're peaceful. They wear robes and sit under trees. There is so much oppression historically and abuse of power and sexual assault, abuse in Buddhism, just like every other religious practice. So please do not think that Buddhism is free from that, because it's not. It's there. And you will find it. You don't have to look far to find it, right? With that being said, as I always say, this is kind of what triggered some of your questions. San Diego, within 10-mile radius, there's probably 30 Buddhist places, meditation. I'm not even counting meditation, yoga, like Buddhist places. My suggestion always is go to all of them, as many as you want, right? I mean, to me, that's one of the beauties of the Dharma Bum Temple is we bring in monks and nuns as guests and lamas and things like that, but we don't have head monks or nuns. We don't have lamas. We're not masters, the line at the end. We're not masters or gurus or teachers or students. We're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. I would love all of you to visit every single Buddhist place in San Diego. And when you go there, see how you feel. Can you learn? Can you benefit? Does it seem genuine? Does it seem authentic? Right? I gave the example of, I won't do it again this week, but when people are pushing, no, it's all right. If people are pushing stuff at you, that's, just show up and be places. To me, the Buddha taught the word dana, and I'll kind of end, like I said, I don't write, but if I did, I'd write a whole book on this. The word dana, it is the most, in my opinion, next to karma, the most misinterpreted word in Buddhist teachings, and it's completely ruined by most Western Buddhist teachers. The word dana literally means generosity. That's what it means. And the Buddha said the Four Noble Truths, the first thing is suffering. The second one is the cause of suffering. The third is the ending of suffering, and the fourth is the path, Eightfold Path. Correct views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. It's what the Buddha taught. All the Buddhist teachings for 2,500 years come from that. You can Google all of that. It's there for free. Stay to the first 2 Google search pages and you're good to go. Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, right? Read different versions of them and then spend the rest of your life trying to apply it, okay? The root cause of our suffering, greed. It's the first one. We overcome greed with the practice of dana, which is generosity. The Buddha taught very clearly around generosity. Generosity is only generosity if you feel pleasant before, pleasant during, and pleasant after. He also taught his monks and the nuns to not teach generosity until after people had given. because he didn't want to use generosity as a way to manipulate people into giving. Make sense so far? Welcome to America. Almost every Buddhist place you go to, many, I shouldn't say every, in many, at the end, they have, it literally makes my skin crawl. Talk about being an attached Buddhist. It is the one teaching that I'm so attached to that makes me sick, because we have an opportunity to teach what generosity really is. The Buddha said, I'll come back to the other part. The Buddha said the greatest gift you can give, the greatest form of dana, which is generosity, is the Dharma. He didn't mean like a Dharma talk. Dharma is teachings of the Buddha for those who don't know. He didn't mean give a Dharma talk. He meant practice the Dharma. The greatest thing you can give, the greatest form of generosity, is loving kindness and compassion that you can give to people. That's the best. What does America do with the word dana? At the end of Buddhist stuff, they say, now let me tell you about dana. And the Buddhist tradition has survived for 2,500 years because of dana. And we have a dana box, they say, or a dana bowl. Or now here's your opportunity to give dana. Dana is not money. Dana is not money. Some of the biggest, most well-known Buddhist teachers manipulate this, and it makes me sick. Dana is not money. Dana is generosity, and that's it. That's what the Buddha wanted. It is the root cause, or the root cause of our suffering is greed and craving and desire, and the way we overcome it is through generosity. And what has America done with that teaching is we've turned the word dana into money. So be careful. Now, just because people charge money for Buddhism, as I said to you when we talked after, doesn't make it bad, right? You could pay nothing, you could pay $1 million. It doesn't make it bad. Just because I've spent a lot of time around a lot of Dharma teachers who do charge money, and they're beautiful people with beautiful intentions, and they're just trying to survive. You know, they're not buying fancy cars and doing fancy stuff. You know, they're just they're lay people. They're trying to feed their families and children, and, you know, no different than anybody else. So I just because there's money involved doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. But as I said to you, and I'll share here, when you go to these places, any place you go to, how do you feel? When you go to a Buddhist place, pay attention to how you feel. Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel you can benefit? Do you feel you can learn? And learn. That's why they're there. You know, the sacred safe spaces. And so ultimately, the only one who's going to know that is you. Do you feel right there? And if that's where you feel right, then that's where you should be. You know? Yeah. What else? Yeah, in the back.
I have a question about, and can you tell me a little bit, it's probably a long story, about the emaciated Buddha?
Yeah. Is that it? Okay, no, I thought you were still good. Yeah. So, emaciated Buddha. The statue right behind me is the emaciated Buddha, the skinny guy up here. And it was great because I just mentioned this on Saturday. It wasn't until the Women's Buddhist Leadership Program gifted the little pink Buddha that's on the shrine here also, that we've had an entire shrine up here all these years without a Buddha statue on it, because technically the emaciated Buddha isn't even the Buddha yet. That was when he was still Siddhartha Gautama. Without giving the whole life story, the Buddha, for those who don't know, the Buddha was just a human, born a prince, father was a king, and he was sheltered. They say when he was born, he was going to either become a great king or kind of like a Buddha, a simple, an ascetic. And the father, of course, wanted him to become a king. So they sheltered him for 29 years. I'll kind of speed this up a little bit, but 29 years, they never let him see old age, sickness, death, or anything. They kept him sheltered. They knew he had a compassionate heart. When he was a kid, they were like shooting, slingshot at like birds. Birds fell down, and he's maybe 10 years old is the story. And he saw this bird like suffering in pain. And he was just so taken by emotion at harming another animal, another sentient being. So they knew he had this gentle heart that he would not want to be a king and rule and kill. So 29 years old, he sneaks out. It happens over 4 nights, but with his buddy, his attendant, Chana, and he sees old age, he sees sickness, and he sees death. And like I said, in kind of the town, and immediate town and kingdom where they were, they removed anything that got old or sick or died. So he sees these things, and he sees an ascetic, like a simple monk. And he says to Channa, like, what is this? Does this happen to all of us? And Channa says, yes, my lord, we all age, we all get sick, we all die. And so he returned, and he ultimately said, how can I live a life of wealth and riches as a king when there's a world out there that has nothing and is suffering? So he renounced his princely life. There's, kind of depictions of him with his long, beautiful hair, where the long hair was a symbol of, being royalty. So he cuts off his long hair. He gets a bunch of cloth that was given to him. He sewed it together, put on a robe, and he joins with 5 other guys, and they roam the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years, from the age of 29 to 35. He picked up a couple teachers along the way. Eventually, one of the practices they did as kind of a yogi at the time was they thought that attachment to the physical body was the reason they kept being reborn. So they would starve themselves, and they ate 1 grain of rice a day. And they say that he was so emaciated that you could take your fingers front to back and they would touch. So they came to a riverbed, and someone offered him some kind of kanji, porridge rice. And they were like, no, we don't eat. And Siddhartha, it's like, I'm paraphrasing all of this, but he said something to the effect of, "We're hungry, guys," And so he took the bowl, and he said, I'm going to set it in the stream, and if the bowl goes against the stream, then I'm going to eat. The bowl goes against the stream, he begins to eat. Those 5 guys are like, you sellout, you food eater, you traitor, they left him. And it was at that point in time where you discover what's called the middle path. Maybe I'll touch on that later, but the brief part about the middle path is we live our lives in such excess, right? My guess is every one of us in this room has more clothes than we need right now, but we're still going to buy more. We probably order more food than we need and throw away too much food. Most people in this room, if not all, we have enough already, yet we will continue to consume. I mean, that's the Dharma bums: work, produce, consume, work, produce, consume. Buy a bunch of stuff, throw it away, buy more, throw it away. We waste so much, right? And this is not me talking at you. I'm in this mess with you all, right? So I just want to clarify that. So middle path is finding a balance, and that balance is different for everybody, right? It's not like you need to have X amount of shirts or shoes or hats or whatever, but where is your life out of balance physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? So he begins to eat, and then continues on his own, and he sits down for 21 days under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, India. You can go see that spot right now. And he realized that all suffering comes from the nature of his mind. He said, I'm not moving until I figure out why we suffer. So he sat down 21 days, he figures it out. And then there's above the exit sign right there, there's a tapestry on the wall there. That's him, where those same 5 guys saw him. And they said, hey, there's Siddhartha. It looks like he's figured something out. Let's go sit with him. And he sits down, they sit down with him, and he gives what's called the first turning of the Dharma wheel. And he teaches the 4 Noble Truths, which I referenced earlier. And they said, wow, you have awakened. We will call you the Buddha. The Buddha just means the awakened one. So he was given like a nickname. They called him the Buddha. He was just a wise dude. And then he taught for 45 years. And at 80, he died. And the reason when we opened downtown 18 years ago that we picked the emaciated Buddha was we actually got from Buddha for You 18 years ago, which ironically now we are Buddha for You. But the first 3 pieces we bought were the emaciated Buddha, that tapestry, and the 1,000-armed Kuan Yin statue back in the corner. And the reason we did the emaciated Buddha and not, sorry, it's the Tanka along this wall in there, but along this wall. So the reason that we did the emaciated Buddha was we did not want to sit with this enlightened Buddha like that's what we were trying to become. We were young, ignorant fools. Now we're older, maybe a little less ignorant and still foolish. But we were physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually near death, no different than he was. And so we sit with the emaciated Buddha as this motivation, inspiration that says, look, if this dude who was near death could figure it out and live a healthy path, so can we. And so the emaciated Buddha has always been kind of the heart of this space that says, look, we're just regular folks trying to get through our days. And we can all be a little kinder, a little gentler, a little more forgiving, a little less attached to our view being right. And how do we help people and not be so greedy and angry? So that's the emaciated Buddha in brief. Yeah. Question? We'll do one more and then we'll close. or maybe two. Do you have a question? What else? Yeah, hand in the back there, and then here. Go ahead. Sure. I just see a hand. I don't see a body. Yeah.
Do you remind me in Vietnam, I saw a lot of lady Buddha?
A lot of what?
Lady
Oh, lady Buddhas, yeah.
statues, and I haven't seen that in other parts of Asia.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about that.
I'd have to see. So the comment was in Vietnam you saw a lot of lady Buddhas, and you haven't seen that in other parts. Did you say in other parts of Asia?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd have to see specifically what it was you were looking at, because there are many kind of spiritual beings, celestial beings that are depicted in the female form that are not necessarily the Buddha, but when you look at them, they might look like a Buddha. You'll also see many Buddha statues with lipstick and makeup on and things like that. So you might from that see it as a woman. But I'd really have to see what you saw specifically without knowing what it was. It'd be hard to comment on.
They called it lady Buddha.
Say again?
They specifically called them my tour guides.
Yeah.
Buddha.
It may have, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I didn't make up the word.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't, yeah. It may have been Kuan Yin, Avalokiteshvara, who is the large center one behind me here. She is, she's the endless body of compassion. Her name means hearer of the world's cries. So she hears all the suffering in the world and pours out compassion to heal. And I've heard her referenced as the Lady Buddha. But again, it really just depends on the culture and what specifically it was. Yeah, for sure. One more here and then we'll close.
So recently, I broke off a relationship, and when I did that, it definitely was not coming from a space of like loving and kindness and compassion.
Shocker.
Reflecting on that, like I want to learn from that lesson.
Yeah,
I'm having a really hard time forgiving myself for the way that I acted,
for sure.
and so I'm kind of stuck in this like catch-22 where I want to learn from something, but it's also driving my suffering internally right now.
Yeah.
It's hard, and I'm struggling to.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that. That's super hard. How recent, if you don't mind me asking, like last week or?
4 days ago.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, man. It's there's a couple things going on. And you're how old?
34.
34. Just a baby. So very seriously, I mean that very seriously. Like you're 4 days after. For those who didn't virtually or maybe in the back didn't hear it, so what you shared was that you're just recently now, I know, 4 days coming off of a breakup, and when you did it, there really wasn't much loving kindness or compassion in the breakup, and now you're feeling pretty bad about it, and so you're in this catch-22 where you're kind of stuck and like, it's driving me crazy. But I also feel real guilty. And this is I'll start by saying this without turning this into like a therapy thing. This is day 4. So your range of emotions are going to be all over the place for the next like 6 months. How long were you together? A year. Okay. Yeah. Your emotions are going to be all over the place. But most importantly, I think it's really beautiful that you recognize how poorly you did the breakup. That's like, it sucks that you did it. But I don't have to say that part. You already get that. It's beautiful to recognize it. It's beautiful to want to learn from it. Was the other part you said you want to learn from it. But you also feel miserable. My first teacher, from Master Xingyang down to Venerable Yizhi, and he taught me around this, which was really how to deal with a situation like this, was 3 things. Often people ask about like dealing with kind of forgiveness, and often people will ask questions kind of coming from other religions dealing with like repentance and things like that. And so this teaching is kind of similar to those lines, where there's 3 things you do. First is to recognize what you did was not in line with this practice of loving kindness and compassion and, this kind heart and equanimity, Buddhist teachings, right? I don't want to make it about Buddhism, but everything Buddhist teachings are, your practice, the first step is to recognize what you did was not in line with that. You're there. It took you 4 days. So I mean that very seriously. Like, it sucks what you did. I'm not going to dismiss that. and you don't want it dismissed. But I also really, really, really want to drive home the fact that 4 days later, as a 34-year-old dude, you're feeling like shit from that. And that's potentially a really good sign, because there's a lot of people that wouldn't even care.
Yeah.
So don't hate yourself too much for that. Second, so once you recognize what you did was not in line with the teachings, the second thing is to apologize. Now, here's the catch. If it's something, I usually give the example of, like, if all of a sudden 30 years later, I have some realization of somebody I harmed 30 years ago, and now I'm all Buddhist, and so I want to apologize to them. They're probably over it by now. They're probably fine and really would have no interest in hearing from me. So you don't need to call them up 30 years later, nor, I'm guessing in this situation, does the person want to hear from you 4 days later with some apology because you're trying to be all Buddhist now, right? Probably not going to work, the reality. But the apology is still important. So you turn to, call on a good friend and apologize for what you did. Kind of an expanded version of what's bringing up this question. And sit with your friend, whoever it may be, and apologize for what you did to your friend about what you did, and expand on why you feel so bad, and like really own that apology, and you'll cry and you'll hurt and you'll feel like a mess, but own that apology. And that's the second part. And the third part is the vow. Vow to never do it again. All of us in this room have done things in the past we're not proud of and that we shouldn't have done. And sadly, many of us in this room are going to continue to do things in the future that we're then going to look back on at some point in time and wish we hadn't done. That's why vows are really important. Just hold that vow that says, look, this is what I did. There's a good chance in your future you'll have more relationships and you'll have more breakups. But when those relationships and breakups, if and when they do happen, reflect on this. And know you don't want to do it in the same manner. So that's where that vow says, the pain and suffering that you caused the other person, you don't ever want to put somebody through that again, right? So own it. Wasn't in line with these teachings. Apologize to somebody for it sincerely and vow to not do it again. And other than that, you're just going to sit with the pain for a while. And I don't hear you trying to avoid it. That's not the point of your question. But often people will ask questions around those lines where, they did something that, this is not you, but they did something that harmed someone and they feel so guilty about it. They want to know, what do they do with that guilt? Feel it. You hurt somebody. Often we're looking like this kind of quick, let me off the hook for what I did to somebody. I think part of this practice is being with present moment. The present moment is when we do things that hurt people. I think it's important to feel that. To not try to run from it so quickly. To not hate yourself for it. But to own it. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May this merit be transferred to those who need it most. All right, before you all head out, our Dharma Bum host Hazel has a few announcements for us.
Hello. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night, we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thanks, Angela.